So interesting here in terms of the lengths by which the apostle goes to stress that no one will be excluded, right? He doesn't just say, well, all, he doesn't just say simply all will be, he will cause it all, but he says small and great, rich and poor, free and slaves. Like, don't imagine that any aspect, any group in society will not be able to avoid this. All will be put under the same duress. It will be all inclusive, Elder Athanasios tells us. And in order to show his success in placing the seal of the Antichrist on everyone, regardless of gender, age, or social status, the evangelist lists all social classes in this verse. The direct ultimatum of demanding that honor be rendered to the image of the Antichrist under threat of death will be coupled with an indirect method of compulsion. This is very characteristic of how the devil always works, and we saw this during the COVID insanity, didn't we? The social and governmental pressure to conform was immense, and many people felt they had no choice and went ahead and did what they were told, and they were compelled by, at least intellectually, spiritually, psychologically, they felt compelled. They had to do something they didn't want to do. And that's why many people were speculating that this is a kind of type of what will happen at the time of the Antichrist, because of this pressure and total threats of losing jobs, losing households, losing dying. You'll die if you don't get this, and all the rest. There was a total totalitarian spirit of compulsion, which of course many people picked up on, but even so, many who picked up on it went along with it and felt compelled to do obedience to the powers that be. And so we have this in the scriptures right here. He will cause it. And I think we could safely say he will compel, and not that he will be able to force entirely everyone, but he will do everything he can to force them, compel them, pressure them to succumb, to submit, to be obedient under threat of death. And this method of compulsion, which is of an economic nature, because they will not be able to buy or sell, as you'll see in a moment, which also ultimately includes the threat of death, right? So whatever's possible, they will do what they can to threaten all to submit, and as we'll see shortly, and that no one may buy or sell unless he has the mark. And so if you can't buy or sell, what happens to you? Let's go to 17. What happens? People will ask. Everyone will ask. The first thing they'll ask. I remember when I was in the village as a village priest, and I talked about this to my co-workers there, my church wardens, and I said to one of them, who's a very nice, pious man, I said, because we were talking about the citizens card, which is now being imposed upon Greece. Then it was just a discussion and an attempt, a first attempt. Now it's actually being imposed right as we speak. It started in September. This citizen card is an all-in-one card in Greece, so that you cannot operate in society if you don't have this card. Sound familiar? Sound like something we're talking about tonight? Very similar. Very similar. I think we're seeing a very close type to what is talked about in the book of Revelation in Greece right now. So with that card, because it's a socialist state, because you have health from the state, right? You have many services through the state. And so if you don't have this card, eventually, after 3 years, they're giving you a 3-year period to get the card. Change your old ID card into this new ID card, which has a chip in it, and of course has stored perhaps all kinds of information about each individual. No one really knows what the computer will show to the person behind the screen when they're coming to the government for the various services, health, driving, whatever it might be, paying your dues to the state. And so the people have up until 3 years. I think it's actually even, let's see, if it starts in this fall, I think it's even less. I think it's through 2025 so not quite 3 years, to comply and get the card. If they don't get the card, they won't be able to have anything to do with the state, and so they won't have health insurance. I don't even know if they work. I'm pretty sure if they work at their own business, they won't be able to conduct any work or business because they have to pay their taxes and all the rest. None of that will be functioning for them. They will be essentially outcasts in society. They will still be able to live through other people and all the rest, but they will be, as far as the state's concerned, they will not be able to function. And so you already see a type of this mark, this seal, right now coming in Greece. Now, there's prophecies from contemporary elders that they're not going to make it, that they won't get there with their plans. And indeed, Elder Father John, a very holy priest that I was blessed to meet, who was up in Saris, who proposed about 10 years ago, and he told his spiritual children, and his own son told a good friend of mine, that he came out one day and said, tell everyone not to get the card because they won't make it. The Third World War is going to break out before they can implement it totally, and they won't have the means any long after that to implement it. So I don't know. We'll have to see. But we're living in amazing times right now, and things are happening right in front of us that are really reminiscent of this book. And that's probably one of the reasons why you're sitting here tonight, because you see that. In any case, the question was to my church warden, I said to him, what are you going to do when they tell you you have to have this card in order to function? He said, well, I'll have to get the card. I said, well, you can't get the card and be an Orthodox Christian. That is clearly what the saints have told us. Saint Paisios tells everyone, and he's written it down very clearly in his own handwriting and gave it to his disciples, and they published it on the internet. Do not get the card. And we're talking about the card that's right now being implemented in Greece. Do not get this card. It is a type and a forerunner of the system of Antichrist, and it will be a compromise on the part of the Christians to walk into this state and way of life. So it's not the mark or seal, right? It's a card, but it is functioning in very, very similar way and leading to that. And so the question is, if you get deeper and deeper into this system and deeper obedient to the system, and now you're compromised in some ways, spiritually and in other ways, will you get out afterwards? And so that's the gradual nature of the noose around the neck of free humanity that we see globally going on all over the world right now. We see centralization of power, centralization in terms of the monetary system, and the health system. And now we're hearing people say that if another crisis breaks out in terms of some kind of health crisis, that the WHO will be involved in charge of all the countries, and they'll have to comply and go along with compulsory inoculations and all the rest. So we are seeing this play out right in front of us, what we're talking about tonight. And the question will be, well, what do I do, right? Will I not be able to continue our banking and our everyday businesses and not be able to buy and sell? And this is what Elder Athanasios said 40 years ago. You will be able to buy and sell. You will be able to go to the supermarket or the gas station, and you will be able to transact, and as long as you have this mark, this seal, which will eventually be physically placed on your hand or your forehead, which will eventually be placed, right? So that's interesting. He didn't say that they're going to go from 0 to 100. Boom. One day you're just a free human being, and the next day you have the mark on your hand or forehead. He said eventually. Very interesting. So maybe it'll be applied to other means besides before it gets to the hand and the forehead. I don't see why that would be outlandish. That's how things work, very incrementally. The boiling of the frog, as it were, right? I've been hearing this for 33 years since I've been Orthodox. Elders and spiritual fathers. I remember I was down in Georgia with Father Damien of blessed memory, the abbot of the Monastery of Glorious Ascension. This was back in 1994-5. And he used that analogy. We're being slowly boiled, like the frog that is boiled and doesn't know quite when to hop out of the water, right? So That's the nature. That's the methodology that is at work. But that's how it works in our spiritual life. That's how the devil works. He's very patient. He sits in the corner. He sits in the shadows, and he observes and he works gradually over time. For those who are serious in the spiritual life, he doesn't just immediately reveal himself. Only when he knows that his enemy, the saint or the struggler, is fully aware of him, then he might appear and reveal himself. But otherwise, he's in the darkness, in the shadows, and incrementally he works on our spirit, on us spiritually, to undermine us with little compromises here, little compromises there. That's how it is in the spiritual life. This is not strange at all to anyone who lives the spiritual life. That's how it works. So the elder continues, if you accept this mark, you can buy whatever you want, whatever your heart desires. If you do not have it, then you cannot pay for anything. You cannot be a shopper. You can no longer be a consumer. Oh my goodness. Can you imagine? You're no longer a consumer. Let's be serious and honest with one another. Amazon, Walmart, like that's just how it. What are you going to do? How are you going to exist? Do we stop and think about it? Are we seriously considering that this might be in our day? No more access. What do you do? Are we prepared? I think the vast majority. I'm not prepared. I don't know about you. I don't think I'm prepared. I don't think I've really thought what I could do. We are totally dependent on the system that is in place, and they know that. All the enemies of mankind and Christ, they know very well that system is the way that they can compel people to be obedient. So you're no longer a consumer. The same will hold true for the business operator. Your produce and your market, your product, and you depend on the sale of this product. You will not be able to sell your product unless you have the mark or the seal of Antichrist. So no access to markets any longer. So what we immediately can ascertain here is that the banking system and banking technology will be crucial in this whole application worldwide of the seal, because you cannot buy or sell if you do not have the seal of this mark on the hand or the forehead. So it's all about access to buying and selling, access to the marketplace, access to the society. And so it will be connected to the banking system. And that makes perfect sense. And we see right now in front of us, within maybe months or years at the most, we're going to have perhaps a global currency, but certainly a digital currency from central banks in major countries, especially in the Western world, that's being introduced as we speak right now to the world. They are introducing electronic or digital currencies, which are an amazing leap of control over the masses. And of course, you can imagine immediately, it's not hard. They can turn off you from society electronically, and you will not be able to buy or sell. It's not hard to imagine. So technology apparently will be at the service of the Antichrist and his system, which is his system of control, his control grid, right? The elder says, in its efforts to make identification methods more efficient, this is back in the 1980s, he's talking, technology is directing its attention to designing an identity card. It's now implemented, as I said earlier, in Greece. Like Elder Athanasios said this 40 years ago, and what he talked about is implemented now in Greece. Designing an identity card which will be indelibly embedded in the right hand or forehead of the consumer. Now, we're not there yet. It's a card, but it is essentially functioning as we see it will function in the time of the Antichrist without it being on the right hand or the forehead. Interestingly, the elder says the seal will contain two numbers, not just one, but two numbers. This seal or mark or code will contain two numbers, one general and one specific. The general number will be 666, and the specific number will be the individual account number granted by the international banking or financial system. That makes perfect sense, right? Because they want to know you personally, right? They want to be able to identify you as submitting. And so it's not going to be just a general number, but they want that number, that person, that identity associated with the identity of the Antichrist. They want both of them together and that this is a submission of a particular person to the system of Antichrist.